Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, an apology for those who are expecting to see a different Michael Johnson, but I'm sure hopefully won't disappoint you. I'm the CEO of Rhinomed, which is a small Australian medical technology company. We have global aspirations, so as a result, that's why we're associating ourselves with people who've done world firsts, like my guest here this morning. A brief introduction to Rhinomed about what we're about. We're an early stage company. We focus on nasal respiratory technology. Simply put, we focus on breathing, and especially breathing through the nose. We're listed on the Australian Stock Exchange. Our market cap is about 15 million, so we're an early stage technology company. Our top 10 shareholders own about 25%, so our share price oscillates between the 2.5 to 4 cents. So we really are an early stage company, and the reason for that is simply we have new technology. So we're only just starting to monetize it, which is important. We are protected though with a family of over 60 patents that are both granted and pending globally. So we are building a true platform and a really valuable platform going forward. We are a medical technology company, of course, so you would expect to see a clinical program, a well thought through clinical program, and that's what we've got. We've done clinical trials and we've done clinical programs in sport, seeking to demonstrate that you can breathe better through the nose and that will have an impact. We've done a program in snoring, so over-the-counter sleep, where we've demonstrated some great results in reducing snoring. And we're also about to embark on a clinical trial in sleep apnea, a clinical trial in drug delivery as well. And we're doing some other interesting things with congestion, anxiety, and also appetite suppressant. So our original clinical trial, and this is important from an investor perspective, relates to the technology that goes in the nose and stents the nose. And the comparator technology that you should think of is the strips that go over the nose. Now, Robbie Fowler made those very famous in the late 90s, or early part of this century. We benchmarked our product against that. So when we say we improve airflow by 38%, we're comparing it to the strips. From an investor perspective, that is critically important for a couple of key reasons. The company that developed the Breathe Right strip was purchased by GlaxoSmithKline in 2007 for $566 million. The irony of that decision is the patent, the final patent, expired in 2013. So we have a very interesting market presence in this space. We're an emerging technology company with a superior branded technology that's going into a market that's proven market with a proven customer base. Now, I'd now like to welcome to the stage our brand ambassador, a gentleman who needs no introduction, but has also demonstrated throughout his career that he's able to achieve first. Please welcome Sir Stephen Redgrave.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Michael. It's nice to be here. I invested quite a lot of time in trying to win races and brought a few little mementos along with me. So 5 Olympic gold medals that when I was coming up on stage with Michael Johnson, he's got the same amount of gold medals as I have. But again, it's a different Michael Johnson.
I'm the slower, fatter guy. So one of the things that we are trying to do as a small company is own breathing. Now, if you think about breathing and think about other brands, you think about shoes, you think of Nike, you think of computers, you think of Apple, you think of coffee, you think of Nescafe. If you think about breathing and sleep, there is nobody in the market. We are trying to do a world first here. And so what we realized early on is if we're going to own breathing, we need to understand the importance of breathing. And I suppose, Steve, that's where, especially from a performance perspective, breathing is actually critically important.
You think of life survival is that the 3 main things that you need is the food that you eat, the fluid that you drink, and the air to survive. And if you're talking about elite sport, nutrition is very much drummed into us as athletes of what type of food that we should be eating, at what time of the day, of what type of training that we're doing to get a benefit out of that. There is very little focus, if any, is actually put onto breathing and the air that you breathe. we've got the London Marathon happening tomorrow. It's likely to be won by an Ethiopian or a Kenyan, or certainly at the top end of the field, those countries are going to be involved, is because the altitude effect is they're changing the air they breathe, because there's less oxygen at altitude, is they have to be more efficient. So when they come down to sea level, they perform at a greater level. So what we're saying is the air that you can get in, the more volume you can get in, the potential you've got about taking the elements that you out of the air, of getting that oxygen into the blood that's transferred to the muscles, that gives us the energy that we whatever we do. And that's not just about elite sports, that is a survival of the human race.
I certainly know if I'm doing running, I'll breathe through my mouth, I'll breathe through my nose, I'll breathe through my ears to get as much air in as I can. And that's exactly why we developed the Turbine technology. The Turbine is our sports product. It goes into the nose, it dilates the nostrils. It's, as Steve just said, it's about improving the airflow through the nose to allow you to breathe more efficiently, use less energy to power your lungs, to allow you to use it more where you need it, might be in the legs or whatever product you're doing. It's interesting you mentioned nutrition, Steve, because obviously the nutrition market is well established. And that's a market that we all know. We all know that also athletes are likely to use, and some athletes are using, some more famous cyclists have been known to use supplements that they shouldn't have been using. The reason we're going into the sports market with this particular product is because we're socialising people, we're socialising customers with the idea of using something. And that's actually absolutely critically important, because the same people who ride bikes, turns out, it's a growing market, and I know, Steve, you see a lot of them in your area as well. They ride bikes as well. These middle-aged men in lycra, in Australia we have a term called mammals, middle-aged men in lycra. They're everywhere. I know in Richmond Park in London you can get mowed down by a peloton of them. The other interesting thing about these guys is they also snore as well. So not only are we talking to the elite, we're also talking to the mass. And this is why we got quite lucky last year, because with the Turbine, we suddenly found out, would you believe it or not, on Twitter, that Chris Froome was wearing the Turbine. And the reason he was wearing the Turbine is because of exercise-induced asthma. And you know, Steve, from, as you're saying, from a breathing perspective, the better control you have, especially in elite and full exertion, the better.
Yeah, very much so. Of when you're performing as an athlete, the rhythm of breathing is something you're taught very much. If you're lifting weights off the floor, it's about controlling your breathing into that mechanism of before you do the lift. The rhythm that you breathe is important when you're doing endurance sport. If you're running, cycling, rowing, any of those sports, it's about the rhythm and the process doing it. And actually my youngest, my son, has just taken his driving test last week, passed it, so he's out on the road, so be careful from that point of view. But he was very nervous going into his driving test, and what do people say? Just relax, breathe, get a rhythm of your breathing. It actually controls nerves as well. So the mechanism of getting air in and out of the lungs is hugely important.
So ultimately, as I said, we know that breathing plays a critical role in sport and performance, recreational aerobic activity. But the other bigger market, and you all would be aware of this, is the issue of sleep. And increasingly sleep, the importance of sleep, and it's linked to medical issues, the link to performance in particular is critical. And I know, Steve, we spoke about earlier this week about how training has changed since you were a rower as to now, and the role of recovery and the way recovery's changed as well.
Well, scarily enough, I retired from the sport of rowing at the Olympic level nearly 15 years ago. And even my maths can work out that. It was the Sydney Olympics 2000, so 2015, we've just about worked that one out. But I do quite a lot of mentoring for other athletes in all sorts of different sports, and one of the things that they come back to me straight away is asking about sleep, about of a good night's sleep and relaxation and of those processes. And it's about getting that message across. But what you do want to do is to get a good night's sleep, because obviously the energy side of that, if you've got broken sleep, you're not going to be at your best. You need to be rest and recovery. So when you're talking about training, the training that I used to do 15 years ago hasn't really changed that much with the teams now that within my sport. What the difference is their rest and recovery between the sessions have changed. There's so much emphasis now on the recovery, not just on the work. The work is obviously got to be done. Nobody gets being a better athlete without putting the hard work in, but it's what you do between those sessions, and it almost comes as part of the training. So when Matthew Pinsent and myself was training back in the 2000s and the 90s, is that it was very much about getting the work done, getting out of the training venue and going to do something else, trying to lead a normal life. Now the athletes are spaced between their training sessions, so of 2 to 3, sometimes 4 training sessions a day, 7 days a week, 49 weeks a year is what my particular sport does. It's about that recovery between, and that's where they've moved on as performance of athletes, not from the sheer work they've done, but the recovery side of it.
And I suppose in a world where increasingly there's increasing speculation, increasing policing of elite athletes in terms of what they're taking, this is a real opportunity to provide a premium product, premium technology that does a job of not only performance assistance, as in like the Turbine, but also recovery as well. So as a result, the Mute product emerged almost by happenstance, because we're focused on elite athletes and realising that the role sleep plays in improving the performance is so important. And ironically, we also discovered that there's an awful lot of people snoring, and I put my hand up and say I am a snorer, and I'm not prepared to put Steve's hand up, but he might do that himself. But one of the clear things that we discovered is that there's an awful lot of people snoring. And in fact, apart from having a world record champion, it turns out that the UK, Britain, has the world's loudest snorer ever recorded. And it's a woman called Jenny Chapman. She lives in Cambridgeshire, and she was recorded at 111 decibels. Now, to put that in context, that is 8 decibels louder than a low-flying jet. So no matter how loud you think you may be, or how loud Matthew may have been when you're sharing a room when you're on training camps, but that is a very, very loud snorer. So this is ironically, apart from being Master Investor, is also a UK Stop Snoring Week. So we sort of thought, well, you've got to put your money where your mouth is, or your nose out the front here. So we actually gave Jenny some product 2 weeks ago and thought, this could go terribly wrong, but I'm pleased to say last night we found out that it's helping her. So I can't, it doesn't matter how many clinical trials you do, if you can stop snoring, somebody snoring like a low-flying jet, I think we've got something. And it doesn't matter about, we're talking about 38% of people who snore, because it can be people on training camps as well, team performance.
Well, we had a number of snorers, very bad snorers. I snore a little bit when I'm extremely tired. On training camp, especially, we used to go up to a place called Silveretta in Austria, and Matthew and I used to share a room, quite a low ceiling, but the beds were at the other sides of the walls. I used to wake up some mornings with his shoes all around my bed, because I was keeping him awake of snoring. He was throwing stuff. He had another trick as well, and I think that he learned this one at school, is that if somebody's snoring in a room, if you clap your hands really loud, there's sudden noise, it's just enough to disturb the snorer, to wake them up, to turn them over, and then possibly stop them snoring. So that was his techniques from it. The thing is that you, after a period of time, you've suddenly woken up for some reason, you're not quite sure what it is, and you're thinking, God, he's just clapped his hands again, I'm going to get him back from that. But actually, you're still in almost a sleep state, and the time you do wake up, you forget about it until next time he's clapping his hands.
So we know that snoring has a critical role, and that's certainly our market entry point. What we didn't expect to see when we did the trials was the result of the fact that we're not only stopping snoring, in 75% of cases, we're actually also improving sleep quality. And sleep quality, if any of you follow the media, you'll see sleep quality is becoming an increasing issue. And this is a really classic example. In 1950, when Arsenal won the cup, and being an Australian, I'm impartial to what football clubs that you should or shouldn't follow. But apparently that Reg Lewis kicked the winning goal in 1950, and at that stage in 1950, our average sleep time was 9 hours. That's what on average people would get. Last year, when they won the cup again, and I think they may have won it in between, I'm not sure, or may not have a couple of times. Our average sleep is 6.5 hours. So 2.5 hours less sleep. And that has a significant impact on our health, as we're talking about. So when we did our trials, we were very fortunate enough to see that a significant number of people who are wearing the device reported an improvement in sleep quality. And in this world, where the Apple Watch, I think, launched yesterday, wearable technologies everywhere, you can monitor your sleep. One of the things you cannot do is improve the quality, but you can with our technology, which is what makes it quite exciting. So we know that men are going to sleep better. You're going to wake up feeling more refreshed. Why? Because I suppose early on we spoke about the role sleep plays in performance.
Very much so. Is that it's obvious in real terms? Is if you're not getting your recovery, you're not getting your rest, if you're not recharging the batteries, you're not going to perform. And as an elite athlete, it's all about that performance. But it doesn't matter if it's elite level or if it's just in everyday life. The more energy that we have, the more vigor, the more determination that we can put into our jobs, our processes, our sports, our activity, and we get a lot more out of life from that. So it goes without saying is sleep and recovery is very much about of what we need, and what about of our device of Turbine within sports and the performance side of it, but also from the mute, from the snoring point of view, and actually of you and your partner. There is a stat that 30%, just over 30% of couples actually don't sleep in the same room with each other because of snoring issues, and they're actually sleeping in other rooms in the house. So perhaps it's a marital aid as well.
So you may wonder why sleep has such a critical role in improving health. Some amazing research that came out last year from Harvard indicated that if you think about the body, you've got the circulation system and you've got the lymphatic system that clears the waste. So the circulation system brings nutrients in, the lymphatic system removes it. The lymphatic system exists everywhere throughout your body except in your brain. There is no lymphatic system in the brain, yet the brain consumes 25% of all your energy. So the question is, how does it get rid of the waste? Well, what the guys at Harvard discovered is that what happens is the brain flushes cerebral fluid down the outsides of the blood vessels. Really extraordinary, very elegant way of solving the waste disposal issue. The trick is, it only does it when you're asleep. And that's an emerging area of medical research now, because the implications for dementia, the implications for Alzheimer's are significant. And that's why we're very excited about this particular finding, as we can see that the role in improving sleep quality and the role that this company and our technology can play, not only in improving athletes' performance, but improving everybody's performance, is really exciting. Finally, I just want to finish up by, before we go to a Q&A, two key areas. We're about to commence a trial in sleep apnea. Sleep apnea is a big issue. If anybody has ever seen the masks that people wear, you can understand why people don't want to use it. It's $1 billion product market with $1 billion problem. Nobody likes the technology. Everything that Steve and I have spoken to you about today, with putting this device in your nose, is socializing and getting people used to that idea, which is what makes it so exciting. And finally, why would you invest in a company like this? Well, as you can see on this slide, there's a number of reasons, but ultimately what we invite you to do is actually just try the product. Just try the product, see if it works for you, then think about investing.